If your movements as a 6 are off, the whole team's gonna feel it. Your positioning sets the tempo, and in today's video, we're gonna cover exactly that. Today we're breaking down two important movements that you're going to be making as a defensive midfielder. When you're able to recognize these moments, you're gonna be able to control the game like you want, and you're also going to be 2 steps ahead of the opponent. The clips I'm going to show you involve 2 different systems. One, when you're playing with a single pivot, meaning you're the only center defensive mid and you have 2 attacking midfielders. And then the second system is having 2 defensive midfielders, or a double pivot system with 1 attacking midfielder. And in each system, you're going to be required to make different types of movements. This also depends on what type of system, what type of rotations, what type of movements your team is making. And I'm going to show you some clips that typically these are the movements that you would make depending on the system. The first one is dropping between the center backs. This is a classic build-up play. Typically when the goalkeeper gets the ball, center backs will open wide. You as a defensive midfielder would drop in. Center back just won the ball back. The defensive midfielder has gotten in between the 2 center backs, and we can clearly see the back line of 3. When you drop between your center backs, like in this clip right here, typically it happens when your center backs move wide, just like they did in this clip, and your fullbacks push up. That gives you the ability to drop in between and be the connecting piece between the center backs, and also open up space for your 8 and 10. If the opposition is not pressing you, like in this clip right here, you have space to progress, turn, and potentially find a pass forward. Here, for example, in this clip, we have 2 main options that this defensive midfielder could do. Keeping the ball and moving it side to side helps control the tempo, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when there is a moment to potentially break a line, that is also a great option, and that's a forward option positive. That's what we're constantly looking to do. If we can make these forward passes, that makes you a dangerous defensive midfielder. Here it's a little tight because that striker closed that angle, and that's okay. We keep possession and we keep playing. Notice how that defensive midfielder stays central. His center back pushed up. Defensive midfielder stays to hold the position. If my center back pushes up like that because they have space to progress, then I, as a defensive midfielder, will hold that space and make sure that if, for whatever reason, we lose possession, I'm there to cover. The ball goes back to the center back. You typically would drop into this space behind the striker to create this triangle. Another type of movement will be that the midfielder drops in slightly deeper depending on what part of the field they're building out. So in this particular clip, this center defensive mid is maintaining that shape. They are the top of the triangle behind the attacker to be that option to potentially receive, switch play, or potentially receive and play forward. In this clip, this defensive midfielder doesn't necessarily make the correct decision because he's not aware of his surroundings. These are the moments that you, as a defensive midfielder, when you make those movements, when you make yourself available, you have to scan your shoulder to see what is currently happening around you. And not only are you going to be paying attention to where the opponent is pressing, how aggressively they're pressing or how soft they're pressing, but you're also going to be aware of the movements that your teammates are going to be making, so that you can potentially receive and play forward either with a one-touch pass or a quick touch and pass. And this is what happened in this clip. Again, I just want to really emphasize that in these moments, when you have that little bit of space, can we play forward? Because that pressure is not on you. You have a little bit of space to turn and play forward. Here's another example how the defensive midfielder drops in, stays in between the lines. What do I mean by between lines? When your center back has the ball in these areas, there's usually going to be the attacking line and there's going to be the midfield line. you as a defensive midfielder want to try and be in between lines. Being on the blind side of these two attackers to be an option, potentially in the central area. Notice how that player is still in the middle, staying in the middle, standing still, letting the game play around him. Ball goes out wide. Here's a quick scan. Just seeing what's happening. But here, you are also a potential option in that central area. When you make that type of movement, not only are you becoming an option, but you also attract the midfielder of the opposition, and you can open up space in different areas. And that's essentially what we're looking to do. We're opening up space in here. If the ball is quickly circulated, we can maybe exploit those areas. If that midfielder does not follow you and stays, you now have space to receive right in that central area. Here's another slight movement of how this player just drops in. Center back's out wide. Center back's out wide out here as well. But this player is dropping in slightly to become that top of the triangle. Always think of the triangles. Always think of being the top of the triangle. Why do we want to drop in slightly as a defensive midfielder? Is because we're also opening up space for our 8 and our 10, or maybe our winger dropping into these higher areas. Here's another clip. Top of the triangle. We can't really see the other center back. Has no pressure. Turns, looks to progress forward. Has dropped in between the center backs to create that back line of 3. 1, 2, and 3. This also allows for the two fullbacks to push up. We can see one fullback up here. Fullback has pushed up. The other fullback, the left fullback, is not on screen but has also pushed up. And this also shows how the 8 and the 10 have also pushed up in the half spaces. This is how this particular team builds out. What dropping between the center back does is it gives you, the defensive midfielder, a little bit of time to organize and control the game. That's what we're trying to do as a 6 when we are in those areas. Can we control the tempo? Can we control the game by moving the ball side to side, slowing the game down, or making it quicker? Here's another clip. Again, we can see top of the triangle. We can't see the other center back, but we can see how you, the 6, are the first player to get on the ball, especially when the opposition is not pressing. They're not even pressing high. They're defending in a mid block. They're giving you all the space and time in the world. Can we go get on the ball when we drop between the center backs or slightly lower? Then you have time to control the game, control the tempo. He could be there as well, but they don't build out that way. Again, this all depends on the type of build out, the type of movements, the type of rotations that your team is looking to do. Here, this team builds out with a 3-2 build, where we have the CDM dropping between the center backs, and then we have both the 8 and the 10 a bit higher. We also can see that the fullback pushes up, and we can also see that the winger likes to drop into those pockets of space. Now let's talk about the movements in a double pivot system. This means when we have two defensive midfielders, what movements should you make and what cues should you look out for? When the fullback pushes up forward, they leave a space in the wide areas. So that means that leaves space for you, if you're in a double pivot system, to potentially move into. One player stays central, one player moves out. This is a rotation that converts you temporarily as a false fullback in order to build out and progress play. The opposite side center back is on the ball, and we can see the left fullback is making movement out, and then the opposite side center defensive mid is going to drop in to be an option. The closest CDM stays still, tries to be between the two attacking players, or looks to be behind that attacking line, in between lines. You can see that movement there. Here's not the best pass. We lose possession. However, these movements, if that pass were to be better and that midfielder was able to control, do you guys see all of the space that he has in order to turn and progress? So when these movements and these patterns are rehearsed over and over, you're going to constantly create these openings to where we can look to progress forward. These are my two center defensive midfielders, and you can watch how this fullback out wide pushes up, drags out this player temporarily to make space for the other center defensive mid to receive in that area. Those little moments, those little gaps of time is what we need. What we're looking for as a center defensive mid. Same thing, ball gets shifted over again. We can see how one stays central and the other is in that space on the ball. And you guys notice how these two players always switch. So once the ball gets wide, one drops in, one pushes up, and they're constantly moving like this. They're not both going to the ball. They're balancing out the positions. Here's another clip where you can clearly see that rotation happen again. We have the two center defensive midfielders. One's a little deeper, one's a little higher. The fullback pushes up. The other defensive midfielder occupies that space to get a pass into this area. And that's what they're looking to do. That's how they build out. Here we can see the midfield three. 1, 2, 3. And I really want to emphasize this number 8, the second defensive midfielder, is not moving into this space. We're staying wide to create that width, to create that space that they need. Because right now, it's a 2v2 situation in here, but a pass out alleviates that pressure. This defensive midfielder in this particular moment is that outlet pass. So it's very important for you as a CDM to be aware of the spacing. I don't always need to go on the ball. I'm also sometimes the outlet to play out the other way. Quick combinations and then they get out. Here, unfortunately, not the best pass, but these are the ideas that we're looking to do as a double pivot. Can we look to combine and look to get out? Here's another clip. Again, we pay attention to our two CDMs. Watch their movements. One gets out, gets a little bit higher behind that attacking line. The other is making movement to be a supporting option. Very important to remember this as well is with this CDM moving into this space, they are on the blind side of these attackers, of this attacker right here, okay? He's also balancing out that midfield. So if we split the field in half right here, he's on the right side of the field, opening up space internally for potentially the 10 to drop into, or if the ball gets circulated again, the ball could get played back to the center back in this space. It's exactly what happens. Fullback pushed up. You can't really see it on the screen. Fullback pushed up slightly. CDM now drops in. Notice that this rotation happens when the opposite side center back is on the ball. Mastering these movements is going to change the way your team plays because, again, you're the orchestrator. You're the one that controls the tempo. You either make it fast or you slow it down. But you need to be able to recognize these moments. What type of defensive structure is the opponent playing? How are you guys building out? When do you move? When do you stay? When do you reset play? When do you try to attempt and go forward? When do you dribble and take your space? That is going to come with time, and the more that you watch football and the more times you're put in these game situations, you're going to be able to recognize these cues that allow you to make the correct movements and the correct decisions. If you want to learn more about the defensive midfielder position, check out my website to check out the position blueprints that breaks down everything that you need to know in the 4 phases of the game. If you love this video and you learned something, please don't hesitate to subscribe, because we're going to be posting more videos like this. I'll see you in the next one.